the fight for safer streets in the city.
It is our city against the killers.
From gun violence to attacks on the subway and the alarming rise in hate crimes. Tonight, an in-depth look at the problems plaguing New York. What's being done to address them? With a new administration at the helm, this is a Fox 5 special half-hour. Crime in the City.
Good evening, I'm Steve Lacey.
And I'm Lori Stokes. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of the 5 o'clock news. And here we are 4 months into 2022, and there's no doubt about it. Violent crime is up. The high-profile tragedies continue, and the fear is growing among New Yorkers.
All right, major crimes up 44% year to date, according to the NYPD. And while the numbers aren't getting better, what has changed is the leadership at City Hall. Mayor Adams ran on a campaign promise that fighting crime would be his top priority. Over the next half hour, we'll take a look at the new action plan by the administration to regain control of our streets, as well as the increased focus from Albany and Washington to stem the violence.
We're also going to be looking for solutions, like what community groups are doing to stop the bloodshed and the role of the courts. We start with the epidemic of gun violence, the senseless shootings continuing in last week with a 12-year-old boy shot and killed while he was eating in a parked car in Brooklyn. And in the Bronx, an innocent grandmother fatally shot in front of a grocery store. 61-year-old woman was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, walking home when she was caught in the crossfire of a shootout.
All right, now one of the problems at the heart of the crisis, illegal weapons. There's now a dedicated task force in New York with the goal of shutting down the so-called iron pipeline and the flow of dangerous firearms into our state.
Chris Welsh spoke with the head of the state police about how they will be targeting this network of criminals.
It's enough.
No one can really disagree with that particular sentiment from President Joe Biden, that killings and severe injuries resulting from gun violence need to end.
This is a new day dawning.
New Yorkers are definitely hoping the governor is right about that. In New York City alone, more than 260 people have been the victims of shootings so far this year, according to the NYPD. Incidents include the death of a 19-year-old East Harlem Burger King employee shot and killed during an attempted robbery. An 11-month-old baby girl was critically injured by a stray bullet when she and her mother sat in a parked car in the Bronx. And a 12-year-old boy was shot and killed while eating in a parked car as recently as last week. And in perhaps the highest profile of all incidents so far this year, the killings of NYPD officers, posthumously named detectives Jason Rivera and Wilbert Mora. They were responding to a domestic disturbance at an apartment in Harlem when a 47-year-old man shot them both. The common thread among all these incidents: guns.
Where are these guns coming from?
Governor Kathy Hochul says illegal guns are not coming from New York, a state with some of the strictest gun possession laws in the country.
We are seeing a dramatic increase in the number of guns finding their ways through our borders and into the hands of criminals.
And to help figure out where they're coming from and how they end up here, she's convened what she's calling the Interstate Task Force on Illegal Guns, a coalition made up of federal officials with the ATF, local leaders, including here in New York City, and resources from 11 states and Washington, D.C.
What have you seen in recent months, in recent years, that says we need to do something different?
What we've seen recently is a spike in gun violence after historic lows.
That type of gun violence, says State Police Superintendent Kevin Bruin, overwhelmingly involves illegal guns. Guns that were either stolen or have found their way across state lines via what's called the iron pipeline.
It is not altogether infrequent that the person who's purchasing these guns out of state has a connection to New York, the criminal equivalent of networking.
Here in the Empire State, troopers outside of NYC have confiscated over 1,200 illegal guns so far this year. Bruin says the state police also have more resources today dedicated to social media than they ever have.
It is surprising the amount of social media used by bad actors, bad guys, who then broadcast, on Instagram or what have you, that what they've done or what they intend to do.
How long until you think we might see a noticeable impact from this task force?
I hope sooner than later, but I know it's not going to come soon enough for me. I want it to happen now.
Chris Welch, Fox 5 News.
Well, there's also a new front emerging in the NYPD's war on guns.
That's right. It's a disturbing trend being called the plastic pipeline. These are ghost guns and 3D printed guns, which are firearms built from kits. They don't have serial numbers, making them harder, if not impossible, to trace. Criminals are ordering the components online and creating the weapons in their homes using 3D printers. They can then be made for less than $500 and sold on the street for about 3 times that. The NYPD says what is needed right now is a federal law that would make it illegal to ship any type of gun parts to any state where it's already illegal.
The next key parts of the mayor's public safety plan are a crackdown on quality of life crimes and a revamped version of the anti-gun units.
All right, the NYPD calls it a way to answer community concerns and the continued spike in shootings, but critics fear it's just a return to controversial policing policies of the past. Linda Schmidt talked to former Commissioner Bill Bratton to get his take.
We are focusing on the people, the places, and the things that lead to criminality and lead to violence and deteriorate the quality of life for everyday New Yorkers.
NYPD Commissioner Keechant Sewell throwing down the hammer when it comes to criticism about her decision to bring back what is basically broken windows policing. It is a police strategy that cracks down on smaller quality-of-life crimes like turnstile jumping, open-air drug selling, public drinking, dice games, and public urination that can lead to more serious crimes. Mayor Adams on Fox 5 News in late March saying the city has turned into the wild, wild west without any consequences for those who break the law. Critics say broken windows policing targets and incarcerates more people of color and the poor.
It's been long discredited for furthering mistrust between the police and communities.
I don't want to have people tell me you're criminalizing the poor. We've reached a point in the city where rules don't matter. And I'm not accepting that.
The mayor is also adamant that his initiative is not a throwback to the broken window strategy of the past, which had been criticized for some police abuses. Bill Bratton has practiced broken windows policing since the 1970s and implemented it as the NYPD's commissioner in the early 1990s under former mayor Rudy Giuliani.
When I started the effort to go after fare evaders, 1 out of every 7 that was stopped and arrested by the police was wanted on a warrant. 1 out of every 20 or 1 out of every 21 were carrying a weapon. Box cutters, guns, Uzi submachine guns. When I left 27 months later, overall crime was down 39% in the city.
Mayor Adams has also rolled out the NYPD's new neighborhood safety teams. Their mission is to get guns off the street. The teams are somewhat similar to the controversial anti-crime unit that was disbanded in 2020. But one big difference is the new anti-gun teams wear clothing identifying them as police officers instead of wearing plain street clothes. Bratton says there are now controls in place to help prevent police abuse.
We have body cameras. Everybody's got a smartphone to record what they're doing. We have much better algorithms, much better mapping, much better training than we had 30 years ago.
Linda Schmidt, Fox 5 News.
And one of the biggest quality of life issues may be the city's homeless crisis. Just today, we saw the tense moments play out as the NYPD moved to clear an encampment in the East Village. It's part of the mayor's crackdown on makeshift shelters across the 5 boroughs. It's also happening underground as the NYPD works to remove homeless people from the transit system. That effort, part of the mayor's subway safety plan aimed at better protecting riders.
But there are serious questions about whether this will just be a temporary fix. Morgan McKay spent the day underground to see how it's working.
It's close to noon at the end of the line in Jamaica, Queens, but homeless individuals find a spot to nap out of the brisk wind. Unbothered that all passengers are supposed to exit, many homeless individuals stay on the train, ignoring MTA staff cleaning around them. Staff members speaking on the condition of anonymity show us pictures of people sleeping on mattresses inside trains, passed out in corners, and say at times they are worried for their own safety. Subway ridership levels are still lagging behind pre-pandemic days, and transit crime is up 75% compared to the same time period last year. But as the MTA looks to lure riders back to the trains, officials realize that addressing safety is the first step.
We are by no means out of the woods, and there is a lot of progress that needs to be made on subway safety. I just want to acknowledge that the work has begun. A serious effort is underway.
Mayor Eric Adams launched his subway safety plan almost 2 months ago, promising more officers patrolling trains and platforms in order to crack down on individuals carrying all their belongings onto the subway, panhandling, using drugs, and more. The goal of the plan is to then use these officers and outreach teams to encourage those using the subway as a shelter to instead find refuge in a safe haven or stabilization bed.
This is not about sweeping policies or announcements. This is about a humane way of ensuring this is done right.
However, results so far are mixed. During the first month of the mayor's subway safety plan, nearly 80 people per week accepted placement in shelters, a jump from about 22 people per week in January. But it remains unclear for how long some of these individuals stay at these shelters before moving back to the streets. Many homeless individuals say they would rather risk sleeping on the subway than stay in a congregate shelter where they could be beat up or have their belongings stolen. The mayor is having outreach teams hand out this flyer highlighting safe haven and stabilization beds, which offer more privacy along with access to healthcare and substance abuse services. But right now, the city has only 1,100 stabilization beds and 1,600 safe haven beds.
If they don't answer the question of where people can go and also how people can access services without encountering red tape, they're not going to actually address the root causes of unsheltered homelessness.
As part of the subway safety plan, the mayor will be creating 500 more safe haven and stabilization beds. So far, thanks in part to the prior administration, 350 are operational. But advocates say they need at least 3,000 more of these types of beds in order to successfully help move those in need off the subway. Reporting from the Upper East Side, I'm Morgan Mackay, Fox 5 News.
All right, and next we're going to take a closer look at the alarming rise in hate crimes in the city and the problems with prosecuting them, why many bias crimes are never charged as such, and why even less make it to conviction.
And then the Bronx District Attorney is going to join us live to discuss the surging gun violence in her borough and what's being done to fight back. Welcome back. It is an alarming surge carrying over into 2022. Hate crimes are rising at staggering rates in New York City.
That's right. They're up 98% this year. The spike's targeting a variety of groups for their race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. And the numbers are likely much higher as many of these cases are underreported or never charged as a hate crime.
And if they are, even less make it to conviction. Arthur Chien explains why.
While New York City is a melting pot in a city of millions, it's always had its share of hate and bias, a disease that's worsened with the pandemic. Hate crimes, particularly those targeting Asian New Yorkers, have skyrocketed since 2019, and that's just the cases being reported. For every case you hear about, civil rights groups tell us there are countless others we don't hear about.
We have people who call us, they're on the subway and they get spitted on, or there's a slur. And there's some intimidation or menacing.
In 2019, the NYPD recorded 3 hate crimes targeting Asian New Yorkers. The next year, 28 were attacked. And by 2021, that number exploded to 131 attacks. But the problem is underscored by violent and even deadly attacks that are not classified as hate crimes. Just this year, Michelle Go was murdered, pushed to her death on the subway tracks at Times Square. Christina Lee was stabbed more than 40 times inside her apartment after she was followed home. And 62-year-old Guiying Ma died after a man smashed her skull in with a rock as she swept the sidewalk. None of the cases were deemed hate crimes by district attorneys in New York, mainly because in New York, an attacker has to utter a racial slur during the attack to be charged with a hate crime. The suspect literally has to give police and prosecutors the right words to be charged. And in the case of Christina Lee and many others, the victims are dead and nobody knows what was said.
There may be police looking at that and saying, well, there was no slur. Why should we classify it? But you have to look. My feeling is if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it.
We could look at the perpetrator's social media accounts. Do they have a history of visiting white supremacist sites? Are they promoting ignorance and discrimination?
Glenn Megponte is a civil rights attorney and professor at Hunter College. He lobbied for the Hate Crimes Act signed into law by President Obama in 2009 and is amongst those who are calling on authorities to investigate violent crimes by looking at more than just the seconds or minutes when a violent act occurs.
Him and a couple other agents.
He's picking up cans. Data from the city shows an abysmal 15% of hate crime arrests ending up in convictions. Examining a suspect's internet activity, which groups they're a part of, and what they've said to others in the past and after the attack gives prosecutors who are mindful of their conviction rate an effective way to win cases. And experts say once there's a conviction, alternatives to prison should be weighed.
But also allow perpetrators, instead of going to jail, to unlearn the bias and the discrimination that they have learned in America. And we should rehabilitate the perpetrators so that they can enter into the city and the society again.
Minister Only Love Chika Alston also supports changes to how hate crimes are investigated and says re-education in lieu of incarceration works in some cases.
If you steal a candy bar from a store, you may get community service, but if you steal $10,000 from a bank or you scam 50 people out of $5 million, you're going to get incarcerated.
Arthur Chien, Fox 5 News.
All right, and joining us now to talk more about crime in the courts is Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark.
DA Clark, good to have you on with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the gun violence that we're seeing, particularly in the Bronx, coming to a head once again. We talked about the 61-year-old grandmother who was shot and killed, innocent bystander. NYPD saying 33% of all the shootings in the city right now are in the Bronx. And if you look across it, the 10 neighborhoods, 5 with the most shootings are in the Bronx. What are your biggest challenges?
The challenges is that we have this violence. You know, our neighborhoods have been under-resourced for years, and therefore people are facing poverty. We have mental illness. We have people with substance use disorders, the education system, nothing for our kids to do. It's a lot of things that add up to what has become the violence. And it's concerning because people need to be safe. And I know, because I live in this community, I grew up here my whole life, and it's very important that we do that. You know, we're getting gun cases day after day after day, and I'm doing all that I can to make sure that we fight it. I established something called PEACE, which is precision enforcement and community engagement. So we're doing both. We're doing the law enforcement side, where we're prosecuting people that are causing the harms with the guns. We had a case where undercover bought 73 guns from somebody here in the Bronx. We had another case where gang members were recycling guns in the community. We prosecuted them. Just last week, we arrested 19 different gun cases. So anybody who are pulling these triggers, or we have information on who is causing the harm, we are working each and every day to get to them. My ADAs are responding to the non-fatal shootings now, and we're investigating them ahead of time. You know, as they happen, we're assigning ADAs to investigate them just as we do with homicide cases when we're looking for the perpetrators. We really want to make sure that we find the people who are responsible. Unfortunately, a lot of times, we don't have people that are cooperating because they are afraid. So some of these shootings are retaliatory. So, of course, they're not going to help us. They're going to go back and take care of it themselves. So we have a cycle of it going on and on and on. But, you know, we're doing all we can. I have my crime advocates going out to the community, speaking to the survivors, making sure we give them the help and the resources and the treatment that they need to cope with the violence that they've seen and that they've suffered. I'm working with the Cure Violence groups where they can meet people where they are and hopefully get to them before they decide to pick up the gun and pull the trigger.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about bail reform. That's probably the biggest political battle taking place right now. It's holding up the state budget as we speak. Do you think it can be fixed? Does it need to be thrown out? We see case after case. We saw that guy smearing feces on the woman just sitting by the train. They can't keep him in jail. He keeps reoffending. Where would you like to see that move as we head forward?
Look, I am trying to deal with the violence as I have it. I got a 61-year-old woman who was killed. I'm working on investigating those things. That is going on in Albany. Those people, the lawmakers are going to deal with it. My job is law enforcement and making sure that the community is safe. And that's what I'm concentrating on. I'm urging people to cooperate with us. I'm working with the police to use different tactics to investigate these things. I'm doing all we can, and we need to get to the root causes of what is causing these crimes: the poverty, the homelessness. All of those things are important. That we need to fix those things on the front end, so that the default is not the NYPD and the Bronx DA's office. So I care about my community, and I'm doing all that I can with whatever laws are out there. I have to use with the laws that's on the books right now to get the job done, and that's what I'm doing. All
right. Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark joining us tonight. Good to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, searching for solutions to stop the bloodshed.
All right, the mission of one local violence interrupter who was brought into the national spotlight with a visit from President Biden. Well, many experts believe that preventing gun violence takes more than police. The city's investing in community intervention groups that are on the ground resolving conflicts and helping people stay on the right path.
Antoine Lewis has a story of one local leader who has made it his life's work.
When President Joe Biden came to New York City in February to discuss the uptick in crime and gun violence, among those Biden met with privately was community leader Kay Bain.
I brought the President of the United States of America to the ghetto so he could feel the pain, the joy, the innovation.
Bain is the executive director of CCD, Community Capacity Development, a human rights nonprofit that invests in city neighborhoods by helping the residents reinvest in themselves, in particular, the city's young people.
A person who doesn't understand or know their purpose in this world, that's dangerous. That's where hopelessness lives. So we really focus in individuals understanding, articulating their purpose in life. Sounds simple, but it's so important.
But it's CCD's role as violence interrupters, community liaisons who short-circuit conflicts before they can escalate, that have allowed Bain and his team to have the ear of 3 New York City mayors through the peaks and valleys of New York City crime, which is peaking at the moment.
What people don't understand about the boots on the ground and the grassroots approach is that we are highly trained, dedicated community servants, that these are intelligent, enthusiastic people who would put themselves in harm's way to make sure that others are safe and protected.
CCD's flagship Sustainable Growth Plan, which partners with distressed neighborhoods to set achievable goals to reclaim their streets, is personal for Bain, who grew up in Brooklyn and Queens. Simply put, he's tired of going to funerals every other week.
I think what brings tears to my eyes is when I go and see mothers bury their children. That makes me cry.
But those emotions empower Bain to continue fighting to make New York a safer place for everyone.
I was taught that when you go to where people are most vulnerable, when you go to the most marginalized, where you see, the highest level of issues and you work and address there, it benefits the overall society.
Antoine Lewis, Fox 5 News.
That mirrors exactly what the DA from the Bronx was saying. You got to get to crime at its roots before it happens. It can't just be done all by police.
Herculean task.
Yeah, it is a huge task, as we see every night on the news. All right, thanks for joining us for this special edition of the 5 o'clock news.
We'll be back with much more coming up on the 6 o'clock news.